This is an analysis of He Never Expected Much by Thomas Hardy. So what I'm going to do in this video is to look at an introduction to the poem as if you're encountering it for the first time, maybe as practice for an unseen poem, and then a little bit more close reading in case you're studying it and you need to know that detail to be able to write about this poem or indeed to compare this poem to another poem. So just making sure that we know it well. So first of all, just looking at this, if you haven't read it for yourself before, make sure you take a moment just to read it. You can either do that by looking at this and pausing it, or to find a copy online. And in fact, if you want to annotate along with me, copies are readily available online. So we've got this first section. If first of all we look at it, starting with the title and then working through. So if you're approaching an unseen poem, or if you're approaching a poem that you're studying for the first time, it's a good idea to think about the title and the connotations and expectations that the title is establishing. So here we've got He Never Expected Much, and we are led to believe we're going to be talking in the third person. Okay, this isn't a title that says I never expected much. It's using that personal pronoun he. So we wonder who is the speaker, and if he never expected much, his expectations have fallen kind of not short, but if you say you don't expect much, then you don't have high hopes to start off with. And the implication is he didn't expect very much, and in fact, he didn't get very much. And we wonder, what is he expecting? How much was he expecting? And what from? So then we move into the body of the poem. And our first word, well, is a kind of colloquial kind of start. Colloquial means when it's being informal or chatty. Okay, it's a more technical way of saying that. And this is as if we've kind of come in and we're overhearing part of a reflective conversation. And we wonder who's being spoken to, and then we get this apostrophe. Okay, now apostrophe in this sense is different to the punctuation mark. Okay, when you're looking for apostrophe in this sense, you're dealing with an address to a person or persons who are not around. Okay, you can also have an address to a personification. A lot of the time, although not here, that kind of starts with O. So if you see the kind of letter O down as a sigh or an exclamation, it may well be that you're about to get an apostrophe, or that is your apostrophe. And here we are addressing the world, or our speaker is addressing the world and is addressing the world directly. So, well, world, you have kept faith with me. And that's an idiom or idiomatic expression for saying that you've been honest with me, you've been true to me, you've kept your promises. And we wonder what promises has the world, or had the world made, that it has then kept. You have kept faith with me, kept faith with me. So we have an end stop here, and then the repetition, almost like this becomes a refrain. Okay, almost kind of that repetition of that phrase. And this then becomes a kind of more reflective tone. You know, when you get somebody talking and they kind of repeat themselves to emphasize or to think about even further what they've just said. So overall, well, world, you have kept faith with me, kept faith with me. It's both reflective and it's in some ways a confirmation of this speaker's feelings. Now, if you want to use some context about this poem, you'll discover quite easily that there is an alternative title or a subtitle to it that talks about the fact that it was written when Hardy was 86. So it's got that kind of reflective and retrospective quality to it. Okay, in fact, I think the title may be something like a reflection on my 86th birthday. Check it. But we begin to realise that we've got this kind of older man, old voice kind of reflecting on things. And if you're talking about the world, then we realise it's a reflection upon his life and how the world has treated him as he's gone through his life. And he moves on to say, upon the whole, you have proved to be much as you said you were. And this has kind of two expressions that kind of show maybe there has been some falling short or some disappointment. So generally, if we say upon the whole, we mean generally or mainly. And much as you said is not the same as entirely as you said. It means that much of what you said has come true. So this next kind of couplet reveals that whatever has happened, he's been largely kind of proven right, reassured, but in some ways the world may have fallen short. So you have proved, world, to be much as you said you were. So this speaker feels that the world or life has made representations to him when he was younger, and he's evaluating how well it has stuck to those ideas. Then we move even further back. Okay, so we get that temporal shift in terms of his memory. And our speaker recalls that since as a child I used to lie upon the leas and watch the sky, never, I own, expected I that life would all be fair. So words you may not know there, leas is like a kind of grassy area, a field or so. So we go back to childhood, a time of innocence, a time of kind of, I suppose, optimism and hope and potential. And we know that this child, the speaker, when he was this child, used to lie and watch the sky. And he says that even then, he never, I own as I admit, expected that life would all be fair. So this childhood voice is one that maybe expected disappointment. So again, we get that kind of contemplative tone. If you contemplate something, you think about it deeply, you wonder about it. And the idea that, I never expected, I admit that life would all be fair, implies that some of his life really hasn't been fair. 'Twas then you said, so this being it was, okay, 'twas then you said, and since have said, times since have said. Okay, so remember, we're still addressing the world. And he's claiming that you said as a child, and you've said to me since. And then again, we get that repetition from the second line in the octave. Okay, an octave is an 8-line stanza. So we've now got a pattern that the second line is a repetition or refrain of the first one. So the world has said on numerous occasions. Okay, so that repetition said, in that mysterious voice you shed from clouds and hills around. So we have a speaker who knows that the world is talking to him with an air of mystery. And the idea of you shed, it means when things kind of fall off you or are discarded. We sometimes say that animals shed their hair or their fur. We say that, snakes shed their skin. So the idea that this voice kind of falls upon you or is dispersed upon you from clouds and hills around. So the whole of kind of nature and the world tells him, or has told him on many occasions, that many have loved me desperately. So we hear the kind of words of the world. Okay, so this quotation is the speaker's interpretation of what the world has said to him. And it says the idea is many people have loved me desperately. Many with smooth serenity. So the sibilance on smooth serenity, emphasising the calm and the kind of quietness, the placid kind of nature. Remembering if you are serene, you would put an E on the end there. If you are serene, then you are kind of peaceful and at one and kind of zen-like, kind of, just completely relaxed and peaceful. So we've got some people have loved the world desperately, some people or many people have loved the world desperately, many with smooth serenity, so kind of smooth calmness, while some have shown contempt of me till they dropped underground. If you show contempt, it's that kind of disdain, it's looking down on somebody. So the world as far as Hardy's speaker is concerned, is populated with all sorts of different people. And this kind of anaphora sets up the different types of people. So the anaphora or anaphora is that idea of the repetition of the same word or words at successive clauses or phrase or sentences. And it shows that no matter how people treated the world, basically there is that inevitability of death. The idea of dropped underground is, I don't know if it's a euphemistic way of talking about death. Okay, if you use a euphemism, then you're using a kind of softer term to describe a kind of more blunt or direct concept. But we have people have been treating the world in different ways, and all of them have died. And we think that maybe the poet is kind of reconciling himself, so is kind of making peace with that, is levelling it with himself, that, all these people have died, and the implication is that maybe he is going to be soon to join them. Back one, and we look at the form and structure, we can see that there is a regular pattern to it all, that actually we have 3 stanzas, we have octaves there, and when we start to kind of look at it, we can basically see our rhyme scheme is A, A, B, C, 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 B through. So you're using your rhymes to kind of, so if you're going A, B, and then these next 3 should rhyme, and then that one rhymes with that one. Okay, and a lot of the time you do get full rhymes. Sometimes you're getting half rhymes or para rhymes, okay, which is where it just misses. You get a kind of feeling of slight disconnection, and it might be that kind of hints at that idea that things didn't work out perfectly, right? Things didn't kind of all add up in the end, but then he never expected them to. He never expected much. And when you read the kind of poem, you realise that this title becomes slightly more curious, that this appears to be a different voice narrating this or introducing this poem, because we're talking about he, or is it the old gentleman taking that emotional distance from his life as he moves one step further to evaluate it? So looking at that, the next thing that I would then try and do is to kind of look at our end stops or look at the points of enjambment. And if I just change colour so you can kind of see these being picked out, I'd start to kind of think, okay, well, we've got an end stop there and an end stop there, nothing there, end stop, nothing, end stop, nothing. And largely, I'm just kind of trying to look for the enjambment. We're largely, you're getting end stops. It's kind of halting you. It's giving you time to pause and reflect at each line. So why are we being enjambed at points? Why are we having to carry on? Well, upon the whole, you proved to be much as you said you were. Okay, so this sentiment goes together. This is a kind of, well, you proved to be, that line break kind of ending there, that sense of expectation, much as you said you were. It's almost kind of bathos, slightly. Bathos is anticlimax, means that, you're building something up and then kind of go, you turned out to be pretty much what you said you would be. Okay, no surprises. And as a child, I used to lie upon the leas and watch the sky. So maybe here we get that enjambment leading to the promise and the, the beauty of the child's expectation, lying there watching the sky. But then we're paused and we come back into the present day. Never, I admit, did I expect that life would be fair. So that kind of enjambment gives us the rush of potential, and the end stop kind of then slows us down, stops us again to reflect what happened. Where you get caesura, where you get these kind of pauses in the middle of the line, again, it's adding to this colloquial tone here, that idea of the kind of conversation in there. Just that kind of rhythm of what is being said, talking to you. And again, I'm just circling the different. And then this final octave, this final stanza. Then we look at the next section, the next stanza. And it's the world that carries on talking. So I do not promise over much, child, over much, just neutral tinted haps and such, you said to minds like mine. Okay, so this is still the world speaking, and the world says it doesn't promise too much. Okay, so don't get too excited. You know, I don't promise an awful lot, and it addresses the speaker as child, and you wonder kind of, is this harking back to his early memory of lying in the leas, thinking about what his life was going to hold, or is this kind of now the earth addressing anybody human as a child, because comparatively speaking, we are so much younger than the world. So we are all children in the world's eyes. And again, we have that repetition of the overmuch. Just neutral tinted haps. So haps are events, kind of think of happenings, right? Things that occurred. And neutral is kind of not biased one way or another. Kind of, you know, nothing that's going to be massively in your favour or massively against you. And these events are tinted, so slightly coloured. Okay, just kind of, I just promise things happening and such. So the world's kind of promise is vague, you know, I'm not promising too much, and I'm promising just things like this. Okay. And Hardy's speaker comments, this is wise warning for your credit's sake. Okay, so if somebody's credit is their believability, their credibility, what they stand for. So, you know, the world has not promised him much, and he takes it that he's been warned for the sake of kind of what the world can communicate to him. And you get this exclamation as he's kind of processing that and realising the wisdom of it. And the alliteration, wise warning, which, you know, kind of maybe giving a reflective tone there. And you've got in our couplet, rhyming couplet, in fact, sake and take, kind of connecting those ideas, you know, for the world's sake, but Hardy links it, which I, for one, failed not to take. Okay, so if you think, is this a positive or a negative? I, for one, failed not to take. Okay, so maybe this if you fail not to take something, then you do take it. So he says that this world gave a wise warning, and I took it, right? And hence and therefore could stem such strain and ache. Okay, and we end up with that extra rhyme. We've now got kind of that tercet, rhyming tercet there, 3 lines tercet, as each year might assign. So he's saying that, rhyming there, assign, or minor sign rather. So he said, you know, I took this warning, and therefore I was able to stem, I was able to hold back the strains and the aches that each year allocated to me, each year might assign. So our poem doesn't end with any great revelation, and the movement through it basically says, you know, I didn't expect too much of life, and the world kind of didn't promise me much, and I kind of knew that was all inevitable, and I lived my life accordingly, trying not to be too upset or heartbroken or moved at the different trials and tribulations that each year gave me. So it kind of ends on, again, that feeling of reflection and retrospective kind of evaluation of a life lived. If we with end stopped lines, if I'm looking through all of this, that's the one that isn't end stopped. And we'll see examples of caesura here. In terms of the whole poem, I'd look at the use of half rhyme, kind of giving that kind of slight disconnection, slight sense of dissatisfaction, the generally regular patterns that are going on in it, and there's no kind of metrical form in there that is regular through it. If you spot one, if you disagree, please do leave a comment, if there's kind of something meter going on. But there is a kind of regularity to it, which kind of has that idea of something coming to a close, that you can talk about. So hopefully that has helped. It's a kind of strange little poem, in terms of just a reflection on somebody's life, the thoughts of an 86-year-old man as he looks back, thinking, well, this is what happened. If you need any context on Hardy, do look into not only his poetry but also his life. He does tend to write about things that are really quite bleak, both in his novels and his poetry, and he tends to write about the English pastoral and the kind of disappearing countryside way of life as the Industrial Revolution creeps ever further. So the whole idea of there being a kind of life dedicated to an examination of loss and change and what promise there was and how it materialised or didn't. You may also want to look at his love life, because that definitely wasn't happy, and he certainly didn't behave well at points during his life, and that is a whole other set of notes. So I hope this has helped. Good luck. Bye now.